Episode 2, SoFi Weekly. Bindable on Twitter said, we're excited to announce we're working with SoFi, the digital personal finance company, leveraging Bindable's platform. SoFi will offer their members direct access to relevant offers via SoFi branded online choice marketplace for auto, home, condo, and renters insurance.
They make it to where you can white label insurance products and have them all branded yourself. SoFi is going to have a day or something where they release a bunch of insurance products and they're all going to be labeled SoFi insurance, SoFi home insurance. You're not going to find Bindable anywhere on it. And then SoFi over time is going to try to replace that with their own infrastructure so they're vertically integrated.
They almost sound like a middleman that connects many insurance companies to aggregate and get the best end user experience. So is that the value prop? They're just a white label for SoFi right now?
It's like an all-in-one solution. It takes care of a lot of the problems SoFi is going to have when like building it themselves. SoFi is trying to scale and get as many direct deposit users as possible.
The two things that sort of stuck out to me were, number one, that they have both an enterprise SaaS offering and then what they're calling insurance as a service. And it almost seems to me that you're going towards this path of further aggregation, white labeling solutions and making everything out of the box. Like you have banking as a service now, which is what SoFi is trying to get into. And then you have insurance as a service. And then you have the SaaS side.
I don't think anybody else is doing this. There's a lot more below the surface with Bindable. They do offer all these like tech solutions for insurance, but they also do some cool stuff that might have some parallels with SoFi Relay, where you can take in third-party loans or insurance and actually just see it on a graph like in your Relay app and really be able to see like, oh, this is how many payments I have, and then see like a graph and all these little cool solutions. That would be really cool if Relay was able to like measure your insurance rates and stuff.
Yeah. And I haven't looked into Bindable too much. I feel like every company that we've dealt with a little too closely, we've put an offer in to buy the whole company. Yeah, that's how we bought Technisys. We wanted a new banking core. That's how we bought Galileo. That's because we wanted an issuer processor. So once they start dealing too closely with Bindable, I'm like, well, how expensive is this company? I don't want to go buying again. So
it almost seems also that Bindable, from their offering alone, seems to be an on-ramp onto SoFi becoming a primary themselves, right? Because they're essentially like an aggregator for multiple insurance products. SoFi is already dabbling with multiple insurance products. We know that they have ambitions to become a primary provider, i.e. not get a referral fee, but actually do everything in-house so that they're the ones offering the insurance product. That's what a primary means, because right now all they're getting is a kickback to refer you to Lemonade or to someone else. And so it seems as though Bindable is like that dry run or that intermediary step to set them up for becoming a primary later on down the line.
And by the way, SoFi Plus should be fully rolled out by the end of this month. Everybody,
SoFi Plus is like Robinhood Gold, basically, right?
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't pay for it.
You don't pay for it?
Right now, it's only direct deposit members. I swear somebody said, or Noto said, that they are going to try to open it up to other people that don't have direct deposit, because that's a lot of people on SoFi right now. And you get double points, which they already have a high point ratio right off the bat when you join. I've earned like $111 just from points without a credit card feeding that point system. So it's just
the double
insane.
point and the 0.25% off the personal loans. That's really what's new. And then obviously the direct deposit features that they've already had, like the 2.5% and things like this.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about that is that the potential for it later on down the line after they introduce it for that cross-selling opportunity is just really big, right? Because you can imagine a world where they're starting to give you benefits on the FinServe side in addition to the lending side through SoFi Plus, right? And so they can make it a little bit more aggressive in terms of the deposit limits that you need to have. But ultimately, the abilities that it unlocks for the flywheel is really what gets me excited about it. But that's long term. That's far out, right? So right now it's just points. It's just a better APY. The requirements aren't even that strict.
Yeah, and I think it's mainly, you know what, if you're going to go head to head with another lending competitor and say, okay, well, they have similar rates, but I am a direct deposit user with SoFi, well, might as well get the 0.25% off, or even that might get you into doing direct deposit because you can get that offering on a personal loan with all the reward points and everything that you would also get. So it's very exciting.
WisdomTree has announced Stride and Galileo as payments partners for WisdomTree Pride. So WisdomTree is a financial technology company. It's using Galileo as its backend, and it's going to provide users with access to retail payments capabilities, including demand deposit accounts, money movement capabilities, a bunch of other stuff, using Galileo as its strategic partner.
We're making more money. This is going to be like an S curve, I think. Just these partnerships, the more money that we're going to be retaining under our belts, the more that we're going to start innovating. WisdomTree is just another part of that. H&R Block is now a customer of Galileo's as well. Nobody knows H&R Block's savings app. Everybody's coming out with the savings app. Apple was coming out with the savings savings app as well with Goldman Sachs, which I think is kind of hilarious.
There's two different things that they spoke about, because I don't just want to sell SoFi and sell SoFi. Let's talk about the goods and the bads. There was two partnerships that were announced here, two main players. Galileo, which played a part, but then there's also Stride Bank. They're supposedly huge. Why not SoFi? And this is super weird. So Stride Bank is obviously going to be that point of contact where they can actually help facilitate that as a program manager. Okay, so there's a lot of different parts that make up an enabler payment network. Stride Bank is going to play the part of a BIN sponsor or a bank identification number sponsor, as well as the program manager. Those are two big parts that SoFi could play, but aren't playing in this matter. So I thought that was super weird that WisdomTree didn't choose Galileo and SoFi to be those different parts, and instead chose Stride Bank. Talking about WisdomTree really quick, WisdomTree has assets under management of $71 billion. Is all that going to be going into their crypto wallets? No. If it does, that's where Galileo is going to make their money. They make it off of transaction-based revenue, and we take a fixed cost. So it doesn't matter whether you're spending on $1 for a pack of gum or $10,000 for a new car or whatever. It's going to be a flat rate. I don't actually remember what that number is. WisdomTree is a big player, but they're heavily dependent on crypto. They play a lot in the crypto space. So right now, they're about as low as they could be.
It's a statement right here where it says that WisdomTree Prime Visa debit card will initially be available as a virtual card that can be used with Apple Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay, with a physical debit card to be released shortly after. And it feels like Riley was saying, everybody, it seems, is coming up with their own sort of unique app. Everybody, it seems, can do a virtual card. It is so much easier to onboard for these major companies going the route of a virtual card first, because there's so much less hoops for them to jump through. A lot of these non-fintech regular tech companies are offering their own virtual cards. And it's something that I think is going to become more and more prevalent in the upcoming years, because it is so easily readable by these companies like Galileo, the companies that actually provide the services to make it plug and play.
Like you said, the people that are making those virtual cards possible is Galileo. It's not that the tech companies are just walking in with these softwares. It's companies like Galileo that make that possible. We're still needed in that service.
So like in 2019, Clay Willis, the former CEO of Galileo, released this product called Galileo Instant, where you as a fintech company can go to their website, click a few buttons, and then just like sign up for like digital cards. Super easy, something that would take 6 weeks reduced down to like 35 minutes. That was one of the reasons why back in like early 2016, 2018, 2019, Galileo was kind of like a soft monopoly in the US. Just a few days ago, they took Galileo Instant off of their website, which makes me think they're working on something completely different.
Speaking of Technisys and Galileo, we didn't get a chance to talk about it on our inaugural episode, so I want to take a section of this pod to talk about what our thoughts are. One of the bull cases, obviously, of SoFi, outside of it replacing legacy banks, is it being the back-end infrastructure for the next 1,000, 10,000 fintechs that are a start, just like Amazon is the back-end infrastructure for like hundreds of thousands of companies and governments today when it comes to cloud computed storage. Can someone give a top-line level breakdown why we bought Galileo for $1.2 billion and what it actually is going to be able to do for SoFi?
So Galileo is a payment processor. They play a role in the whole payment network, and they sort of allow companies that need more data or payment cards like debit cards or credit cards to be able to offer those to their clients. So this is called payment cards as a service APIs. They also give embedded finance opportunities to different companies for their online opportunities. It's sort of a completely different company than SoFi. They're not offering banking solutions or anything like this for SoFi. They're offering it to other institutions. This is why the term AWS of fintech has been passed around by the likes of Anthony Noto or Chamath. The similar way that Amazon did it where they had a customer-facing company and then an enterprise-facing company with Amazon Shopping versus Amazon Web Services. This is the same thing as what SoFi is doing with Galileo and Technisys and SoFi.com or their app.
The second part of that question, what is the long-term bull case? This is fresh on my mind because I talked about it earlier this week, where this entire paradigm, payment card as a service API, it's making it plug and play for many companies to have fintech offerings that are powered by Galileo. For example, Riley on Twitter just reminded everyone of a Samsung partnership. Samsung is not a financial services company. They're not a bank. They basically use Galileo for them to offer their own credit card. And their own credit card then has benefits for Samsung products into that ecosystem. The reason why this AWS finance paradigm exists for SoFi is because it can change the entire landscape, where today you're competing on sort of like a front end, bank versus bank, one provider versus another provider. For example, if I want to get a credit card, I could go to the SoFi credit card, or I could get the Samsung credit card. However, the benefit of providing this all out of the box, this payment card as a service API, is Galileo will get a cut from every transaction for that client because it's a B2B offering. The analogy that I used in my video was it's almost like Tesla's full self-driving. Obviously, a very imperfect analogy, but just for the sake of explaining that licensing model, Tesla can compete against Ford in terms of like a one-to-one vehicle to vehicle. As a consumer, I'm going to choose one, whichever one I buy. But that technology is inherently native to Tesla because they've gathered all of that data, similar to Galileo because they have all of those APIs already built. They have that network already built to become a service provider for these financial services. And so all of these businesses now that want to create their own sort of credit cards or their own fintech offerings are going to be paying Galileo to do that because they can do it out of the box. Samsung doesn't need to build out their own payments network. They can just license Galileo's technology and then have a credit card that is powered by SoFi, and then they can also break into that offering. But this is a very powerful paradigm for SoFi later on down the line, powered by Galileo, powered by Technisys, powered by all of these back-end B2B offerings, because you're connecting all of these different businesses with a unified back-end perspective, right? That entire like, okay, let's take bookstores and let's put them online. That's almost how Galileo is going to be seen for the banking industry. Anthony Noto was explaining this in a fireside chat through an analogy where he was saying, you know, you're just driving by and just bank branch, bank branch, bank branch. None of them are really connected. They're all sort of on their own infrastructure. They all have to do it natively. Some of them are running super legacy stacks, building a cloud service or an entire unified backend for that, and then licensing out that technology to other providers to, number one, enable them to have fintech offerings while at the same time collecting payments for all of those. That is the reason why that is seen as a paradigm shift.
And the cool thing about all this is that banks are decentralized from doing this. If you look at the just culture in banks now, usually when you're on some sort of exec, you're kind of like sworn in for like 5 years. And if your time frame is just 5 years, you're not going to want to be putting a lot of like risky moves and shaking the system up while people above you are watching you very closely. Like the reason why Samsung chose Galileo is because they didn't want to do it themselves at all. The fraud that you have to deal with, you have to build stuff from scratch. And if you mess up, your profit margins are going to be sinking. 2 to 3% on Samsung's level is a ton of money. And you're going to have to build this up and patch all these things. Like straight out of the box, Galileo provides this fraud detection system, and they've been doing it since 2001.
Is there any competitor to Galileo? Can someone answer that?
Yeah, lots of competitors. We hold no monopoly there. One of our biggest competitors is probably Stripe, probably about $100 billion market cap. They're a massive company. They definitely compete directly with us, but I think that we actually offer a better service. For example, with Galileo, that's just one thing, right? That's the service APIs for all the payment cards and everything along this lines, all the data, all the fraud protection, like Riley said. But now with Technisys, now we can go, okay, not only can we set up your payment cards, but we can set up your entire bank for you, set up everything, offer you the payment transactions. You don't have to go to multiple different connections to have every process with a different partnership. You can be with us. We'll even offer you discounts for using multiple sets of our processes. And not only that, because SoFi is a nationally chartered bank, we can also store the money at SoFi. If you guys don't have nationally chartered bank and you have cash management accounts, we can be that FDIC insured chartered license to actually hold that money for you. And that's sort of the next big play and the selling point of AWS, of fintech.
With every subsequent acquisition that SoFi makes, they're further building their moat around Galileo's business. Like Galileo is a unique offering. Let's say it has 50 competitors, way less than that. But let's just say for the sake of example, all of a sudden Galileo plus Technisys, that narrows it down to 10. Galileo plus Technisys plus Pagaya narrows it down to, maybe 4. And so as SoFi continues to add more pieces to that puzzle, they can further diversify their product offering and thereby build their moat even further on a technology platform perspective.
The growth in this company is quite unique as well. Back in Q2 of 2020 to Q2 of 2022, the most recent earnings, we went from 36 million accounts up to 117 million, 225% increase in the matter of 2 years. The most interesting part is the revenue from Q2 of 2020 was 16.4 million, but then in Q2 of 2022, it went up to 82.2 million, 401%. So not only are we able to grow at this blitz scale over the last 2 years, but the actual average revenue per user is spiking. That's super, super exciting, especially for the Galileo clients. Most people don't even know that they're using Galileo cards. Like that's the interesting part, right? The cards that you get are regular debit cards. They're not branded with Galileo's name all over it. It's big names like Robinhood's card is through Galileo, Chime, Revolut, Coho here in Canada. These are big names.
We're only really getting started with the Galileo product, right? The awareness is still fairly low. Lots of people still don't really know how Galileo fits into the entire ecosystem or what it does. Lots of these large companies don't know Galileo's product offering. They're starting to now. And I think that Visa Ready certification is really going to help them build that awareness, because all of a sudden now you're in this club. You have a drop-down list from Visa's website of partners that are certified, and they've already been vetted by Visa past that first hurdle that first barrier. So many more companies can now become aware of Galileo. Yeah, sure, that 400%, it's a lot. But if we're talking about something that has the potential to completely disrupt an entire industry, this, to me at least, is really just the beginning. The most exciting parts have been very recently, right? Like that Visa Ready certification. That was something that, personally was super exciting, but so many people are like, okay, whatever, it's another partnership. It's not. The network effects that can come from it in terms of a new customer acquisition for Galileo is really where that secret sauce is. Visa has a list of companies that they've vetted. Visa is like the largest rails in the world, basically. They have a list. A first layer of vetting has already been done so that those companies later on down the line say, okay, we're so much more likely to work with them because they're associated now with Visa's name. They're on that list, essentially. So this is Visa's website. You can see Galileo there is a partner. All of Visa's existing partners can work with Galileo through this. Visa is already making connections between their partners, right? So Visa is like that host at that party, and Galileo is just like the newest guest. Visa is going to like introduce them to all of these other companies. And because payment card as a service API is so niche, I think Galileo only competes with one other or maybe two other Visa partners in that same list. So if you filter by that payment card as a service API, all you're going to get is Galileo and like one other company.
Yeah, so it was like CoreServe and Galileo that only offer the same payment cards as a service API. And just going down the list of what they can actually offer is really interesting. I think Galileo kind of takes the edge. SoFi is not just a North American or even just an American company. Galileo services a lot of Latin American countries. SoFi has services in Hong Kong, and there might be a little bit of talk about Singapore. However, it's not confirmed. But Galileo, in fact, does do Canada, Mexico, US, and in some places in Latin America as well, which other companies like CoreServe, the other only Visa certified partner, they do not offer that at all. They only offer United States of America. Technisys, on the other hand, is a banking platform where they actually help design websites and the actual core processes for banks. Every bank needs their core processes and then their ledgers. Core process is practically the outline of the actual banking, how it's set up for the bank. And then the ledgers like make sure that the zeros and ones align so no numbers get out of place.
What they're trying to do is reach AI communication 20 years from now. You're talking to your bank, and instead of having to call like an agent on a phone saying like, hey, why didn't my deposit go through? You're just going to talk to your AI and say, hey, why didn't my deposit go through? And it's going to be able to understand inflection, context, and all these really unique things. That's what Technisys is trying to do. Like they're trying to build the foundation. It's really cool when you dive into it. Take a step back and think of banking as first principles. When do you need your bank? Everybody's had that moment where they've gone into a store, they've gone in the checkout line, they have a bunch of groceries, they have two things on their mind, and then they get up there and their card's declined and they're embarrassed in front of everybody. That is a banking problem that can't be fixed today. In the future, what Technisys is banking on is that it's going to be insightful. Whenever you need something, it's there for you and it will give you a product instantly. Think of it this way. You walk into Walmart and you have $200 in your bank account, but Technisys knows that you spend around $250 on Saturday for groceries for the family. So it says, hey, usually you spend a little bit more than what you have in your bank. Would you like a buy now, pay later loan of $50 and you could just pay it when your next check comes in and we'll just deduct it from from your next paycheck, and you don't even have to think about it. And you don't have to like fall into these traps. And there's so many problems that we're just not even thinking about because it's impossible to solve now.
Yeah, I think the AI side of banking is quite interesting, considering how many noticeable purchasing trends that there are. You know, your spending trends, your saving trends. These are things that AI can pick up very quickly. And SoFi is trying to learn that, especially with Technisys. They always want to be the innovator in this platform, which I think is so weird because I think Kathy Wood passed up on this stock saying that they don't think that it's just a regular neobank. And I don't think so. I think the AWS side of SoFi is a big innovator. Whether that's not a big enough portion of the company to be considered an innovating company, that's probably what's happening here. But I think that adds a bit of security for people, knowing that they do have a great lending side of the business that can actually fund, you know, the R&D of companies like Galileo and Technisys.
The cool thing about Technisys is they kind of started not in America, which is the best thing you can do if you're a fintech company, because it's hard to start a business in America. They're so future proof. After just like reading about them for a while, they have like a 20-year roadmap, and you could see that on the second picture in that folder.
Joel says banking is so boring, I can't get excited. Why are we excited about banking?
Banking sucks. I think it's a dumb business ripe for disruption. They're solving problems that the banks can't solve. This year alone, fintech has received the most funding. There's about to be a lot of competition in this space, and it's going to blow up.
$80 billion or something to fintech startups.
Insane.
I thought the SaaS line was way cooler. The amount of deals that they actually made versus the capital that was deployed. Go back and look at that chart. It looks pretty in line with every single other one. And then SaaS is like triple the amount versus the amount of deals.
People are realizing that banks and insurance companies are the last laggards that are ripe for innovation. These are secular growth trends because people are starting to wake up and to say, wait a minute, I'm really tired of paying all of these fees when I don't really need a middleman, because the internet has enabled so many different things for me. I can do all of my investing on a mobile phone. I can do all of my banking online. I don't need a physical branch. Like the last time I personally went into a physical branch, it's been years. And so you had different levels of innovation from the traditional legacy banks. And the reason why their customer acquisition cost is in the hundreds and sometimes in the thousands is because of the fixed costs. All of the major banks have the most expensive real estate in the world for their branches, right? And then you move that onto neobanks. So neobanks are all online, they're all digital. And as a result of all being digital, they can offer you lower fees or maybe no fees at all. Like for mine, I don't actually pay fees because they don't have all of those fixed cost requirements because they're all online. And then the next paradigm is something like what SoFi is doing, where they're saying, why should we have everything separate? Let's have it all live in one space, whether it's your mortgage, your personal loans, your credit cards, and your investment accounts. And so over time, and I just listed like 3 different layers there of optimizations onto a legacy banking infrastructure. And that's why banking is exciting, at least to me, because you need these different layers of innovation, because the industries literally have been benefiting from this entire system for the last 70 years, 80 years, where they have not ever felt the need to innovate because it's just completely oligopolized. Like there's 3 or 4 major banks. It doesn't matter because they all offer the same thing and the consumer always gets screwed.
I was just showing to Joel why you should be excited about this company. Robinhood has a valuation that's much higher than SoFi's, but SoFi is only at 4 million members. This is way higher than what they projected just 2 years ago. So they're growing much faster than they thought that they would. This is expected to continue. Their products are growing even faster than their members. And this is another very, very exciting part about SoFi is that they're cross-selling. Just a year ago, we used to be very lending heavy. Okay, very heavy on the bottom of the funnel. Now we're starting to get very, very heavy on the financial services. And this is only going to get bigger and bigger. Customer acquisition cost, or a CAC, is how much we actually pay per different product. An invest product can be anywhere between $10 to $25 per acquisition, where personal loans can be anywhere from $300 to $850 per acquisition. And this is across the banking sector. Okay, so this is not a SoFi exclusive. In fact, some would argue that it's even higher for traditional banking because of things like normal costs to get advertisements out on TV and these sorts of things. The cross-selling ability is unreal, but yet we only paid for that customer once. We're not going to offer them the $300. We're not going to offer them the $850. We picked up that customer for maybe $10 to $25. The lifetime value of that customer, this is a continuously stacked amount of money that you make over time. This is the same thing that makes SaaS companies exciting. This is the same thing that makes any sort of royalty or overtime monthly payments. That's what makes these companies exciting, especially if someone's into these new tech companies.
What about JP Morgan and Chase and Bank of America? I know the argument is they're not interested in it, but if they did get...
No, they are. There's some big news. Marcus, Goldman Sachs, which is like a really traditional player that has been really trying to lean into the tech side. They're the ones to partner with Apple, right? And then they're also the ones that made the Goldman Sachs app Marcus, which is named after one of their founders. And the idea was, when they started it back in 2016, is to just kind of like build another Goldman Sachs right beside the regular one, but it's a lot newer. So then over time, they can slowly transfer everything. But they're losing so much money off of it. They're restricting access to products that they otherwise had for open for everybody, and they're only giving it to wealthy clients. Also, there's a lot of analysts that speak to people inside of Goldman Sachs that aren't even actually really happy about the whole Marcus thing. They're losing money, and bankers don't like losing money. One thing about the Apple Card partnership that they have with Apple, Apple's building the tech. Goldman is not going to own that when that partnership is over. They're in this thing together, and Apple's going to make all the tech based on Goldman Sachs' old banking infrastructure, and it's not going to be new. Honestly, I think the Apple partnership with Goldman Sachs is the best thing ever for SoFi, because it eliminates Goldman Sachs' ability to build their own infrastructure, because Apple's doing it for them. But Apple owns all this proprietary tech that Goldman Sachs isn't going to have by the end of 2030 when their contract is over. So I feel like the next decade, Goldman Sachs is out of the race.
A lot of it is about current positions too. Current banking structure has sort of been increased return of equity at all costs. And because the consumers aren't leaving at a fast enough rate, they don't care to change anything. And because they're in that current position right now, shareholders are expecting dividends to go up. Yeah. If you're spending all this R&D to create a product like SoFi has, it's going to cost a lot. And I don't think any of them are willing to take the jump. This is exactly the same reason why Tesla was able to get the jump for electric cars, is because they started at base zero. These legacy banks that come down and actually increase their expenses is a very hard scene for shareholders to see. So they wait and they wait and they wait. And then SoFi is able to build up this great position. And then by the time they realize that electric cars or digital banking is the future, it's too late. Joel says, I like Chase. I've never paid fees. Well, you've never gotten any interest either. So if you were with SoFi, you would have gotten 2.5% on your money with no fees anyway. If no fees is a winning strategy for you, that's how brainwashed that these banks have it for you. Oh, I didn't get any fees this time. They're using your money to fund their loans at way, way higher costs. And SoFi knows that. And the reason why they're getting the upper edge is because they're not being greedy. And the shareholders are happy because we never knew a life other than this. We are heading to profitability. If we were doing normal banking standards, we would have already been at profitability.
Nathan asks, is it bad if a legacy bank ends up buying SoFi? There's two positions, right? So, but in a lot of the cases, legacy, when they feel threatened, they just throw money at the problem and then buy the disruptor.
Buy us. I've got a price low enough that they're like, make me an offer. You know, I'm sure Anthony Noto's saying that. I mean, no one's too smart to accept a 300% gain or something like this.
But the whole reason I like SoFi is because I want to eat the big banks. I want to kill them.
I think those are the two positions. I think you guys perfectly summed up like the two camps. Number one, it's like it's personal. They're like, fuck the big banks. We want to completely change the system. And then Tanner's like the pragmatist who's like, hey, man, I'll get a 300% return as a shareholder. Do it. And I'll jump to the next thing.
But this has been the way for every single cult stock like this. You look at Palantir and you have these data crazy people that are like, we're going to take down all these people who are stealing our data and put it into the hands of someone who's not going to go through everything that we have. And then you have the other people where it's like, okay, well, buying it at this price is a good return. I'm not a mission-driven investor. I'm a returns-driven investor. At this price, in this crazy market, SoFi continues to make a good return, and we'll definitely see that November 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think at this valuation, it's at under $5. It went above $5 today.
There's no way in hell that Anthony Noto would even consider any offer under like 35. I would say, like, we were trading for what, 28, I think was the peak. If he turned down $8 billion in 2017, there's no way.
He's said it more than once that SoFi is his life's mission, the culmination.
Yeah,
of
he wants
life.
to be a
he
top
wants this
10.
to be his life's work.
He wants to be a top 10 financial institution. And I think Galileo and Technisys, the good hedge on where's SoFi going to go. Is this going to be a technology platform type of company like a Stripe or a Visa, or are we going to be more of a banking side? And the most exciting part is that all three of our companies are growing at the fastest rates right now. It's quite insane. Let's prep episode 3 in this last minute here. We didn't even touch on a $200 trillion available market right now, a total addressable market in Galileo going after, B2B, the actual, companies, paying other companies This is not a space that Stripe has touched. This is not a space that any of our competitors have touched. And because we now have a bank charter, we can actually start going after that. And hopefully there's some new news as well. I don't even think we touched on
100% new news.
So, you know, come back next week because there's so much to cover. This T. Rowe Price partnership is huge. It's a really big company. So yeah, very, very excited.
Thank you all for joining. See you next week, guys.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
y'all.